Hola, mi amigos. We are back for chapter 10 in Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows, called The Further Adventures of Toad. Now, get ready. Are you ready? What about you? You down here in the front, are you guys ready? Wait. You four down here in the front, are you ready? All right, let's do it. You have to answer all of these questions after we read the chapter in... Still some of you said with a capital, but no, you answer it with a complete sentence. Let's get started. Remember, pay close attention because you do need to do a complete sentence at the end. Remember to try and restate the question in your answer. That's going to help you to use a complete sentence. Let's get started. The Further Adventures of Toad. The front door of the hollow tree faced east. Sitting up, Toad rubbed his eyes first and his toes next. Then he remembered everything: his grand escape, the followers, his leap from the train, and best of all, his freedom. He had the world to himself that early summer morning. Toad, however, was looking for something that could talk. Someone who could tell him clearly which way to go to get back to Toad Hall. He found a road, and the road then found a canal. Toad followed both, marching on patiently by the water's edge. Soon, Toad noticed a pleasant swirl of quiet water. Then a barge pulled by a horse slid up alongside of Toad. The only person on the barge was a big, stout woman wearing a sunbonnet. "A nice morning, ma'am," she said to Toad. "I dare say it is, ma'am," responded Toad politely as he walked alongside. "A nice morning to anyone who is not in trouble. For me it is but sadness. My married daughter has sent for me, so I've left my washing business at home, where my other children are now alone, tearing the house apart like monkeys, and I've become lost, and my money is gone. If I could only find my way." "Well, where might your married daughter be living?" asked the barge woman. "Close to a fine house called Toad Hall," replied Toad. "Toad Hall?" asked the barge woman. "This canal joins the river some miles farther on, a little above Toad Hall. You come along in the barge with me." She steered the barge close to the bank, and Toad stepped aboard. "So, you're in the washing business?" asked the barge woman. "Finest business in all country," bragged Toad. "Anyone who's important comes to me. They wouldn't go to anyone else if they were paid. Oh, I have 20 girls who work for me. I love it. Never so happy as when I've got both arms in the washtub." "What a bit of luck," said the barge woman. "Well, what do you mean?" asked Toad nervously. "I've never have time to wash my clothes," replied the barge woman. "There's a heap of sweaty clothes in the cabin. You can start by washing my underclothes." "Here, you let me steer," said Toad, now quite frightened. "And when you can get on with your washing your own way, I might spoil your things or not do 'em as you like. I'm more used to a gentleman's things myself." "Let you steer?" replied the barge woman, laughing. "It takes some practice to steer a barge properly. No, you shall do the washing you love to do. I'll stick to the steering. That I understand." Toad fetched tub, soap, and some brushes from the cabin. He picked up a few grimy garments. He tried to remember how other people washed clothes. Then he plunged in. A long half-hour passed, and a burst of laughter made him look round. The barge woman was laughing wildly. "I thought you must be a humbug from the conceited way you talked," she gasped. "I bet you've never washed a dish rag." "You common barge woman!" shouted Toad. "I would have you know that I am a toad, and I will not be laughed at by a barge woman." "A horrid, nasty, crawly toad!" she cried. "Now that is a thing that I will not have." She grabbed Toad and threw him through the air. He landed in the water with a plop. Toad rose up to the surface, spluttering, and saw the barge woman still laughing. He vowed as he coughed and choked to be even with her. He struck out for the shore, gathering his wet shirts over his arms. He ran after the barge as fast as his legs would carry him, thirsting for revenge. The barge woman was still laughing. Toad reached the horse, untied him, jumped on his back, and galloped away, leaving the barge to drift on the other side. The toad laughed, a victor's laugh. He was a clever toad. Toad rode on, trying to forget how very long it was since he had eaten. Soon the canal was left far behind him. He had traveled some miles, his horse and he, when he came upon a gypsy wagon. Beside the wagon was a man sitting on a bucket. Over the fire hung an iron pot. Out of the pot came smells warm and rich, and he was such a hungry toad. The gypsy eyed him. "Want to sell you that horse of yours?" Toad was not expecting this. He could turn the horse into cash. "What?" Toad said. "Me sell this beautiful young horse of mine? All the same. How much are you prepared to offer me for this horse?" "Shilling a leg," the man said briefly. "A shilling a leg?" cried Toad. "Why, that comes to only 4 shillings for 4 legs. Oh, no, I could not think of taking only 4 shillings. "Well," said the gypsy, "I'll make it 5. When Toad sat and pondered deeply, for he was hungry and quite penniless, and he was still far away, how far he did not know, and enemies might still be looking for him. "Look here, gypsy, you hand me over 6 shillings and 6 pence, and you shall give me as much breakfast as I could possibly eat out of that iron pot of yours in return. I will sell to you my spirited young horse." The gypsy grumbled, but he counted out 6 shillings and 6 pence and gave Toad as much stew as he could possibly eat. With his pockets full of money and his tummy full of food, Toad tramped on along merrily and thought about his wonderful luck. His pride and conceit began to swell within him. He got so puffed up with conceit that he made up a song in praise of himself and sang it at the top of his voice. "The world has held great heroes, as history books have showed, but never a name to go down to fame compared with that of Toad. The clever man at Oxford know all that there is to be known, but they none of them know one half as much as intelligent Mr. Toad. The animals sat in the ark and cried, their tears in torrents flowed. Who was it said, there's land ahead, encouraging Mr. Toad? The army all saluted as they marched along the road. Was it the king or Kitchener? No, it was Mr. Toad. The queen and her ladies in waiting sat at the window and sued. She cried, look, who's that handsome man? They answered, Mr. Toad. After walking miles of country lanes, he saw something coming down the road. Then he heard something that made his heart stop. Toot toot! He stepped confidently into the road to stop the motor car. Then suddenly he realized it was the very same car that he had stolen, and the people in it were the very same people he had stolen it from. In fear, Toad sank down in a shabby, miserable heap on the road. The motor car stopped just short of him. 2 gentlemen got out. One of them said, "Here's a poor old washerwoman. Perhaps she is overcome by the heat. Let's take her into the next town." They tenderly lifted Toad into the motor car and propped him up with some soft cushions and went on their way. When Toad realized he had not been recognized, he slowly opened his eyes. "Now, keep quite still," said one of the gentlemen, "and don't try to talk." "I won't," said Toad. "I was only thinking that if I could sit in the front seat by the driver, I might feel better with the wind in my face." Of course, they said. So they helped Toad into the front seat, and on they went again. I've been watching you carefully, Toad said to the driver. I wish you would kindly let me drive the car for a little. The driver laughed at this, but one of the gentlemen in the back said, Let her have a try. She won't do any harm. Toad scrambled into the driver's seat and set the car in motion, slowly and carefully at first. How well she drives, said the gentleman. Toad went a little faster, then faster, faster. Be careful, washerwoman. Washerwoman indeed, Toad shouted. Ho, ho! I am the Toad, the motor car snatcher. Toad who always escapes. You are in the hands of my famous and skillful, the fearless Toad. The men tried to grab the Toad. With a half turn of the wheel, the Toad sent the car crashing through a hedge and into a horse pond. Toad flew through the air and landed with a thump in the soft, rich grass of the meadow. He could just see the motor car sitting in the pond. He picked himself up and set off running across the country as hard as he could. He giggled and laughed and sat down under a hedge. Toad again! Clever Toad! How clever I am! He sang out. The motor car went toot 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 as it raced along the road. Who was it steered into a pond? Ingenious Mr. Toad. A slight noise behind him made him turn his head and look. About 2 fields off, 2 large country policemen were running towards him. Toad sprang to his feet and hurried away again. He glanced back and saw that, to his dismay, that they were gaining on him. He could hear them close behind him now. He struggled on wildly, not watching where he was going. Suddenly, the earth gave way under his feet, and splash! He found himself in fast-moving water that carried him along with a force that he could not fight. He knew that in his blind panic, he had run straight into the river. He rose to the surface and tried to grasp the reeds that grew along the water's edge, but the stream was so strong that it tore them out of his hands. Then down he went, and came up breathless and spluttering. Presently, he saw a big dark hole in the bank, and the stream carried him past. He caught hold of the edge. He sighed, blew his nose, and stared before him into the dark hole. Some bright small thing shone and twinkled deep within the hole, and it was moving towards him. Slowly, a face grew around it. A familiar face. A brown face with whiskers. A round face with a twinkle in its eye, with small, neat ears and thick, silky hair. It was the water rat. All right, all my Wildwood friends, you are now going to answer those questions with complete sentences. Remember to try to restate the question. If you use words from the question and then put the answer, you're there. So, with that being said, it's half written for you. So if I were to say to you, what is your favorite color? You could reword that to say, my favorite color is, and then put your answer. That's all you have to do, and you've got these complete sentences. You can use the voice to text. A lot of ways you can answer that. Make sure you click submit. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you guys tomorrow.